Alright guys, so I recently did a video talking about my top 5 coolest guns, and I still think that that is very much the truth. Those are probably like my top 5 coolest overall firearms in the collection. But today I thought I'd do a little bit more of a specific top 5 coolest handguns, because while I do appreciate my rifles, I do like my rifles, I do think that there are some I lean a little bit more towards handguns, and I think that's partly because handguns for me are a little bit more practicable. They're things that I can actually carry around realistically, and I have a ton of fun shooting handguns especially. So I do think that my collection is a little bit more oriented towards handguns, and so for that reason that I talk about some of the coolest. Now, a quick disclaimer, coolest doesn't always mean necessarily the most reliable or necessarily my favorite, but I think coolest as in, like, I look at these guns and I'm like, these are pretty darn cool. So let's start off with number 5, and I think number 5 is going to be similar to my number 5 of the coolest guns, is the Beretta 21A Bobcat. And this little guy right here is cool because I think it's one of the few like honest to God either backup handguns or truly like a pocket pistol. This is something that you guys can see here, like with the size of my hand, I can pretty much cover up this entire gun. And so this is definitely like truly a pocket pistol, and I think I've done videos with this guy talking about it and stuff, so it definitely I think has some legitimacy to self-defense, personal defense, and even some kind of last-ditch survival applications. So overall, the 21A Bobcat in 22 LR is a pretty cool handgun. Now this is I think one of the only guns that's like straight up stock in this list, but yeah, there's really nothing to do to one of these guys, but it's down and dirty, just actually like a user of a 22. And because it's primarily steel, it actually has very little recoil. So pretty cool gun. Like I said, I've actually made a full video really talking about the philosophy of use on something like that for personal defense and survival. So cool handgun. And now that leads us into number 4, kind of going to the opposite end of the spectrum. This is probably the largest handgun on the list, but this is the Smith & Wesson Model 29. Now this one's a 29, just so I double check myself, 29-3. There were up to, in the Model 29's, 9 kind of individual sub-models. So like I said, this is the -3, and I think that this one's cool for a number of reasons. One, it's one of the first, like the Model 29 Smith & Wesson, historically speaking, was cool because it was the first actual like 44, mass-produced 44 Magnum handgun, or maybe not quite mass-produced, but commercially available 44 Magnum handgun. This is also the same sub-model of Dirty Harry's. So for those people familiar with Dirty Harry, this is not obviously the exact gun from that, but this is the same sub-model, so it's pretty much in its like functional ways, it is identical to that handgun. And the last part of it is it's just a really nice shooting handgun. So it's just a very nice shooting handgun. It has a super light single action and a still heavy but very smooth double action pull to it. So if you've not shot one of these more classic Smith & Wesson revolvers, even 357s, the Model 27, they are really nice shooting handguns. It's definitely one of my favorites because it is not only a good bear defense handgun, it is very accurate, but it's also, I love the trigger. If you are familiar with Smith & Wessons, they make fantastic revolver triggers, and I definitely think better than Ruger. I've shot Ruger Red Hawks, I've shot Ruger Black Hawks, which are pretty good, but Smith & Wesson really does a great job with their revolver triggers, even to this day. But the classic like Model 29s and stuff, fantastic handguns. And of course, a lot of people like to give me hell because, you know, the Rugers can shoot heavier, you know, loadings for 44 Magnum, but in my opinion, these guys shoot definitely heavy enough loads for being useful for, you know, wilderness protection, bear defense, stuff like that. These certainly are, once again, the original platform for 44 Magnum. So while they can't necessarily shoot the hottest loads out there, they certainly can shoot hot enough loads that you will certainly be able to protect yourself. So that is the 44 Magnum, the Smith & Wesson Model 29. If you don't have a revolver, I would highly recommend one. And like I said, some of the more classic things like the Model 29 are certainly really good contenders. So number 3 is going to be the Springfield Prodigy, and I really do honestly want to love this gun more. I wish I could put it higher on the list, but this is the Springfield Prodigy. And for me, a lot of people have, mixed reviews on these guys. Some people have had very reliable firearms. Mine has never really ran 100% perfect. If I keep it lubed and I keep it clean, it will run fantastic. But if it gets dirty at all, it does tend to have a lot of failures to feed in the way that it will essentially chamber around, but it won't quite go into battery. So it is not one that I would 100%, like, once again, like protect myself with, but for a range gun, for something that can run fast, this is still a really good gun. And unfortunately, like I said, I do wish it was better than it is, because I've put in a lot of aftermarket internals, and I've made this gun pretty darn good. The trigger is super smooth, super clean, and it's just a very fun gun to shoot. This thing is super fun, and in fact, this is a gun that when I'm training people that are new to guns, new to shooting, this is one of the first guns I have them shoot, because if they can handle a 22, this is the next step up for me. And I think that this is a really good platform, ironically expensive, but really good platform for beginners, because you have a super light trigger and the ergonomics tend to just feel right for most people. So that, mixed with the fact that it has pretty tame recoil, being a 2011 essentially, tends to be a very nice advantage. So the Springfield Prodigy is one of the cooler guns on this list. It is, like I said, cool. It's not necessarily one of my exact favorite guns. I wish it would be more reliable than it is, but I have done pretty much everything you can, from polishing the internals to, aftermarket internals on the ignition side of things to make it more reliable. It just is not 100% reliable. All right, next one up is going to be probably my Glock 19X, and this is, like I've said before, it's kind of like my budget race gun here, because I've done a lot to the top end of this. Ported barrel, of course, aftermarket slide with front and rear serrations, RMR cut. Obviously there is an RMR on this, suppressor height sights, extended slide release, pretty much everything that you can do above the frame. I haven't really touched the frame, and that's because, honestly, in my opinion, the 19X, even with this weird kind of nub here that a lot of people hate, I feel like it just looks good. I love it. It is very nice, and I enjoy shooting this thing. I enjoy the heck out of shooting it, especially because it is ported and it really has, like, not no recoil, but very, very little recoil. Like I said, the porting definitely cuts down on it and makes this thing just such a dream to shoot. It is a really nice gun. I've done videos on this one as well, but very nice gun to shoot and very fun. And I've owned a Glock 19X previously, but I knew when I bought this one, I wanted to really take it to the next level and make it essentially a race gun that is very capable, very fast shooting, and very accurate. So overall, it is pretty darn cool. Now, lastly, but not least, is going to be my my SIG Emperor Scorpion. This is the SIG Emperor Scorpion. This guy is pretty darn cool, and it is cool for a few reasons. So first off, it is a discontinued, and this was kind of like the top of the line SIG handgun for 1911s. SIG did make like the TAC Ops, and they made a few other 1911 variants, but this was supposed to be their kind of like highest premier variant. Now, of course, like I said, these are discontinued, but I wanted to get this not only because this is for the money, a really good 1911, and it's very, in my opinion, looks very cool. It has this burnt bronze kind of look to it, and it's just overall very nice. But this is also sentimentally kind of a valuable gun to me, because I had a friend who unfortunately passed, and he and I had both bought 1911s at the same time, but he bought an Emperor Scorpion in 10 mil. Now, I wasn't able to find a 10 mil, and like I said, these guys are discontinued, so you're kind of at the mercy of what you can find. But I found one in 45 ACP, and I definitely bought it up. And this guy is such a sweet shooter. It's so accurate. It is a really fun gun to shoot. And it's definitely not lightweight. This thing is pretty much all steel. It is a chunky gun, but it is a fantastic gun to shoot, and I do really enjoy it. So definitely rolled in some footage of me shooting this thing, but it is a pretty darn cool handgun overall. And like I said, sentimentally to me, it is also a valuable handgun in that regard. So that's kind of it for the top 5 handguns, coolest handguns in my collection. Once again, you know, these aren't necessary. These are, in my opinion, what are coolest. They may not be the coolest to you, but these are pretty neat. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, God bless, and I'm out.